The morning began quietly, but not peacefully. Rain trickled down the window like tears on glass, soft and steady, as if the sky itself carried a secret sadness. Inside a tiny two-room apartment on the south side of the city, 8-year-old Amara Williams sat on the old couch, her legs swinging above the torn fabric, clutching her faded pink backpack. The television flickered in the corner, but she wasn't watching. She was waiting. Her mother, Grace, was running late again, not because she was careless, but because life never gave her enough hours to breathe. Grace was one of those mothers who carried 2 worlds on her shoulders, one at night, scrubbing office floors when the city slept, and one by day, serving customers at the cafe across town with a smile that hid her exhaustion. Amara adored her. Every night when her mum came home with sore feet and tired eyes, Amara would help take off her shoes and say, "One day, Mama, you won't have to work so much. I'll buy you a house with a big garden and white fence." Grace always laughed softly, brushing her daughter's hair. "As long as we have each other, baby, that's home enough." But this morning, something different was coming. Grace had just tied her hair up, ready to leave for her cafe shift when her old phone buzzed on the table. The screen lit up with a familiar name, Janet Williams, her cousin from another state. She rarely called. Grace wiped her hands and answered. "Janet. Oh my goodness, it's been forever." But the voice on the other end wasn't cheerful. It was weak. "Grace, I just landed. I came to the city for treatment. I was hoping someone could pick me up." "I don't feel so good." Grace froze. Her eyes darted to the clock, 9:10 a.m. She had to be at work in 20 minutes. Her boss had already warned her that another late arrival meant losing her job. Her heart pounded. "Oh, Janet, I wish I could, but I can't leave work today. The manager's on duty. I could send a cab." "I'm sorry to bother you," Janet whispered, coughing. "I just didn't know who else to call." Grace closed her eyes, torn in half. Her cousin needed help, but if she left, she'd lose the only income keeping food on their table. Before she could answer, a small voice interrupted. "I can go." Grace turned. Amara stood near the door, her raincoat zipped up. Face determined. "What did you say, baby?" "I can go pick Auntie Janet," she repeated. "I know how to take the number 5 bus to the airport." "I've seen you do it before." Grace blinked. "Amara, the airport's far. You can't go alone." "But Mama," Amara said softly, "you always say helping family is important. You can't lose your job. I can do it, please." Her small hands gripped the straps of her backpack. Her eyes, big, brown, and full of courage, made Grace's throat tighten. How could she say no? She wanted to protect her, to keep her close. But deep inside, she also knew her daughter wasn't just brave, she was responsible beyond her years. Grace knelt down and cupped her daughter's face. "Okay, sweetheart, but promise me you'll stay careful. Don't talk to strangers, and if anything feels wrong, call me right away. I promise." Grace grabbed a piece of cardboard from the table, the back of an old cereal box, and wrote in bold letters, "Janet Williams." She handed it to Amara. "Hold this sign up so she can find you, okay?" Amara nodded, tucking it carefully into her bag. Grace zipped up her daughter's coat, her fingers trembling slightly. "Take the bus straight there. Wait outside the arrivals gate. Don't wander off." "I won't, Mama." Before leaving, Amara hugged her tightly, the kind of hug that said more than words ever could. "Be safe, my angel," Grace whispered, kissing her forehead. "You're my brave girl." Then Amara opened the door and stepped into the grey morning. The rain was light but cold. She pulled up her hood and started walking toward the bus stop, her small boots splashing through puddles. From the window, Grace watched her daughter disappear down the street, a tiny figure against a world too big for her. Her heart ached. She whispered a prayer. "Lord, keep her safe." She didn't know that her little girl was walking toward something far bigger than anyone could imagine, a moment that would change both their lives forever. Because that morning, on a rainy sidewalk leading to the airport, fate was quietly waiting, and in just a few hours, Amara Williams, the little girl with the soggy cardboard sign, would meet a stranger who wasn't supposed to cross her path, a man with power, money, and a heart long closed off from love. But sometimes, the smallest souls are sent to heal the biggest hearts, and Amara was about to do just that. The bus hissed as it came to a stop in front of the massive airport terminal. Rain still drizzled from the grey sky, dripping from the shelter's edge as Amara stepped down, her small shoes landing in a shallow puddle. The world around her felt huge, rushing cars, rolling suitcases, strangers in coats moving fast under umbrellas. She clutched her sign tight to her chest. Janet Williams. Her heart pounded with a mix of fear and pride. Mama trusted her to do this. She had to be brave. Inside the terminal, the air smelled like coffee and jet fuel. The loudspeaker echoed with flight announcements she didn't understand. Amara found a spot near the arrival's exit, just as her mother had said, and held the cardboard up with both hands. People walked past her, tired travelers dragging bags, businessmen talking on phones, families hugging after long flights. But no one looked like Janet. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Her little arms grew tired from holding the sign up. She lowered it, glancing around nervously. What if Auntie Janet couldn't find her? What if she had already left? She took a deep breath, standing on tiptoes to scan the crowd again. That's when a tall man in a grey suit stopped right in front of her. He was different from everyone else, calm, quiet, with a face that looked both powerful and sad at the same time. His hair was streaked with grey, and his blue eyes seemed lost in thought. He stared down at the sign, then at her. "Excuse me, sweetheart," he said in a gentle voice. "Are you looking for Janet Williams?" Amara nodded politely. "Yes, sir." "My mama said she's coming from Atlanta." The man smiled faintly. "I think there's been a mix-up. I'm not Janet, though that would make my day a lot more interesting." Amara blinked, then giggled. "You're funny, mister." The man chuckled softly, surprised at himself. It had been a long time since someone made him laugh, especially a child. He extended his hand carefully. "I'm Michael." She shook it proudly. "I'm Amara." "Nice to meet you, Miss Amara." He crouched down a little, lowering his voice. "Are you here all by yourself?" Amara nodded. "My mama's working. She couldn't come, but I'm okay. I took the bus." Michael's eyes widened slightly, both impressed and concerned. "That's very brave of you," Amara smiled. "Mama says being brave means helping family, even when it's raining." He smiled, looking at her small face under the oversized hood. There was something familiar about that innocence, something that tugged at his chest. He hadn't felt warmth like this in years. To anyone else, Michael Harris was just another traveler today. But in truth, he was one of the wealthiest men in the state. A billionaire real estate developer whose name carried weight in boardrooms, not bus stations. He wasn't supposed to be here. His private jet had been diverted because of the storm, and his driver was delayed. He had planned to wait quietly in the VIP lounge until things were sorted out. But life, or perhaps fate, had different plans. For the first time in years, he wasn't surrounded by assistants or security. He was just a man in an empty airport. And this little girl, with her cardboard sign and her courage, was the first person who spoke to him, without expecting anything in return. He looked down at her again. "Do you know what your cousin looks like?" Amara frowned, thinking hard. "Mama showed me her picture. She has a red scarf, but I don't see her yet." Michael nodded. "Huh, maybe her flight was delayed. Airports can be confusing." Amara sighed. "It's okay. I'll wait," Mama said to wait. He admired her patience, something most adults didn't have. But as he looked at the clock and saw how long she'd been standing there, concern crept in. "You've been waiting quite a while. Are you hungry?" Amara hesitated. "A little," he smiled kindly. "Well, the cafe over there has the best fries in the city. How about we grab some while we wait for your aunt?" She tilted her head. "Mama says I shouldn't go with strangers." Michael nodded approvingly. "Your mama's very smart. Tell you what, I'll stay right where the security cameras can see us. You can sit by the window and I'll get us both some fries. How's that?" Amara thought for a moment, then nodded. "Okay." As they walked toward the cafe, her little hand gripped the cardboard sign, and he carried her tiny umbrella that had cartoon clouds printed on it. For anyone watching, they might have looked like father and daughter, a sight that made something ache inside him. Sitting across from her, watching her munch fries and swing her legs, Michael felt a strange peace he hadn't known in years. He didn't understand it yet, But something about this little girl was melting the walls he had built around his heart. And somewhere deep inside, he realized this rainy morning, this chance encounter, might be the beginning of something extraordinary. Because sometimes, it's not grand meetings or big deals that change lives. It's the quiet moments with strangers who remind us what being human really means. And Amara, without even trying, had just reminded a billionaire of what life and love truly looked like. The cafe inside the airport glowed with warm light, a small haven from the cold drizzle outside. Rain tapped softly against the large glass windows as travelers hurried by with rolling suitcases. Inside, Amara sat on a stool much too big for her, swinging her legs and clutching a paper cup of hot chocolate. Across from her sat Michael Harris, the man she'd just met, a billionaire in an ordinary suit, though she didn't know it. He stirred his coffee absent-mindedly, still watching her. There was something about her, her calmness, her unshakable little smile, that pulled him in. "Do you always come to the airport by yourself?" he asked softly. Amara grinned, sipping her drink. "No, sir. This is my first big adventure." He chuckled. "Big adventure, huh?" She nodded proudly. "Mama says every adventure starts when you do something a little scary." Michael leaned back, impressed. "Your mama sounds very wise." Amara's eyes softened. "She's my hero." The man's expression faltered for a second. Her hero. He hadn't used that word in years. Not since he'd lost the only two people who ever made him believe in something greater than money, his wife and his little girl. He had buried himself in work ever since, building towers, buying companies and winning awards, but losing himself in the process. And yet, sitting here with this child, a stranger, he felt something warm flicker in his chest again. He smiled faintly. "So, Miss Amara, tell me more about this hero of yours." Amara's face lit up. "Mama works a lot, 2 jobs. She's tired sometimes, but she never complains. Every morning she says, 'No matter what happens, keep smiling because smiles make the world softer.'" Michael froze. "Smiles make the world softer," he repeated slowly. Those words struck him harder than he expected. His late wife used to say something almost identical. He swallowed the lump in his throat and asked, "And what about you? What do you want to be when you grow up?" She thought for a moment, biting her lip. "I want to help people like Mama does. Maybe I'll open a bakery with cookies that taste like hugs." Michael laughed softly, really laughed this time. "Cookies that taste like hugs? That's brilliant." Her eyes sparkled. "You can come too." "I'll save you some." "I'd like that very much," he said quietly. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. The airport lights flickered for a moment. Amara looked at the clock, her small face scrunching with worry. "Auntie Janet should be here by now," she murmured. Michael checked his phone. "Flights from Atlanta are delayed because of the storm." "Don't worry, she'll get here soon." Amara sighed, setting her cup down. "I just don't want Mama to worry." "She worries a lot," Michael nodded. "All good mothers do." For a few minutes they sat in silence, 2 souls from completely different worlds, sharing the same quiet space. Then Michael leaned forward, curious. "Can I ask you something, Amara?" "Sure." "Why did your mom let you come all this way by yourself?" "Most parents would be too scared." Amara smiled. "Because Mama believes I'm strong. She says when you love someone, sometimes you have to trust them to be brave." Michael felt something shift deep inside him. He had spent years trying to control everything, people, business, his emotions, because he didn't trust anyone anymore. But this little girl, barely 8, understood something most adults didn't. Love wasn't about control. It was about trust. Before he could reply, Amara's phone buzzed in her pocket. She answered quickly. "Auntie Janet." "Oh, you're here? Which gate?" Her eyes widened. "Other terminal. Oh, no." She looked up at Michael, panic in her voice. "She's at Terminal 3. "That's really far away." Michael smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry. I'll help you get there." "You don't have to," she said softly. "I know," he replied, "but sometimes even brave girls need a little help." He stood and offered his hand. She took it without hesitation. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the air fresh and cool. They walked through the long corridor toward the taxi stand, their reflections glimmering in the shiny marble floor. Amara chatted about her school, her favorite books, and her best friend. Michael listened, not out of politeness, but because for the first time in years, someone was talking to him without expecting anything back. When they reached the exit, a cab pulled up. Michael opened the door and held the umbrella over her. "Ladies first," he said with a grin. Amara giggled. "You're really nice, Mr. Michael." "Maybe I'm just remembering how to be," he whispered under his breath. As they climbed into the taxi, he glanced at her small hands clutching the cardboard sign. He saw courage, innocence, and kindness. 3 things he had long forgotten existed in the world, and somewhere deep inside he knew this wasn't a coincidence, it was fate, quiet, gentle, and disguised as a little girl in a yellow raincoat. Because sometimes the universe doesn't shout. Sometimes it whispers. And that whisper had found Michael Harris through the laughter of a brave little girl named Amara. The city was alive outside, light shimmering on the wet streets like scattered diamonds. The cab's wipers moved back and forth, keeping rhythm with the raindrops still falling softly from the sky. Inside the taxi, Amara sat by the window, her chin resting on her hand, eyes wide with wonder as the world rushed past. Next to her, Michael Harris sat quietly, watching her instead of the city. It had been a long time since anyone made him feel this calm, and it surprised him that it wasn't a friend, a partner, or even an adult, but a little girl he'd met less than an hour ago. She turned to him suddenly. "Sir, are you rich?" Michael blinked, caught off guard. "Why do you ask that?" She shrugged. "Because your suit looks fancy. And you talk like people in the movies." He laughed softly. "Well, I suppose you could say that, yes." Her eyes grew round. "Wow, like rich." He smiled. "Something like that." There was no arrogance in his tone, just quiet honesty. But before he could say more, Amara frowned slightly. "Then why do you look so sad?" Michael froze. He wasn't expecting that. Adults usually saw only his money, not his loneliness. But this child, with her simple question, saw right through the walls he had built. He looked out the window, voice low. "I lost someone very close to me. A long time ago." Amara's expression softened. "I'm sorry." He nodded. "Thank you. I haven't talked about it in a long time." She thought for a moment, then said quietly, "My mama says when people we love go away, God sends someone new to help us smile again." Michael turned to her, stunned. "Your mama said that?" "Yes." She looked up at him with innocent certainty. "She says hearts don't stay broken forever. They just wait for a kind person to find the missing piece." He swallowed hard. For a man who spent years surrounded by power, money, and people who only wanted something from him, those words cut through everything like sunlight breaking through clouds. He managed a small smile. "Your mama is a very wise woman." "She is," Amara said proudly. "She says kindness is stronger than money. Money buys food, but kindness feeds hearts." Michael stared at her, the corners of his eyes wet. He didn't realize it. But in that taxi, with the sound of rain and the hum of the engine, something inside him began to heal, something he thought was gone forever. Amara, meanwhile, pressed her nose against the glass, her breath fogging up the window. "Sir," she said, giggling, drawing a smiley face on the fog. "Look, it's you." Michael chuckled, watching her doodle another tiny figure next to it. "And who's that?" "That's me." "We're both smiling now." He stared at the drawing for a long moment. 2 little figures holding hands, both smiling. Then, quietly, he whispered, "I'd forgotten what that feels like." Amara tilted her head. "What feels like?" "To smile without pretending." Her small hand reached over and rested on his. "You don't have to pretend anymore." The words hit him like a soft wave. No boardroom, no company, no billionaire's speech had ever said something so simple or so true. For a while, they sat in silence again, the kind of silence that wasn't empty. It was peaceful. Michael found himself studying her reflection in the window. This little girl who somehow reminded him of everything good he had lost. Her laughter echoed like music in his chest. He thought of his late daughter, Ella, who would have been around Amara's age if life had been kinder. He blinked hard, turning his face toward the window, hiding the emotion that was breaking through. But Amara noticed. She always noticed. "Are you missing someone?" she asked softly. He nodded, voice trembling. Yes, my little girl. She loved rain too. Amara didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then she gently took his hand again. She's still with you, she said quietly. You just can't see her. But she's happy that you're smiling again. Michael couldn't speak. He just nodded, wiping away a tear before it could fall. The cab turned into the highway that led to the other terminal. Neon lights streaked across the windows, and for the first time in years, Michael felt something he thought he'd lost: peace. He looked down at the little girl beside him and whispered, "You know, Amara, you might be the bravest person I've ever met." She giggled. "Me? I'm just me," he smiled. "That's exactly what makes you special." When the cab finally slowed near the next terminal, Amara leaned her head on his shoulder, eyes growing heavy, and Michael, the man who thought he'd forgotten how to care, gently placed his hand over hers. In that quiet cab, two strangers, a billionaire with a broken past and a child with a pure heart, shared something no money could buy. And though neither of them said it aloud, both felt it deep inside. They were meant to meet, because sometimes the universe doesn't need a reason to bring two hearts together. It just knows one needs healing and the other knows how to heal. The taxi rolled to a slow stop in front of Terminal 3, where the glass doors gleamed under the drizzle. The storm had faded to a mist, the kind that made the air cool and quiet. Inside the cab, Amara blinked her sleepy eyes and sat up straight. "Are we here?" she asked, rubbing her face. Michael smiled. "We're here, little one." The driver opened the door and Michael stepped out first, holding the small umbrella over her head as she climbed down. She looked around the terminal, clutching her damp cardboard sign that still read Janet Williams in bold letters. A few people hurried past, dragging suitcases. Then near the entrance, a woman in a red scarf waved frantically. "Amara! Over here, baby!" Amara's face lit up. "Auntie Janet!" she squealed, sprinting toward her. Michael followed slowly, watching the reunion unfold. Janet dropped her suitcase and knelt down, hugging Amara tight. Her face was pale and her voice was weak but warm. "Oh, sweetheart, you came all this way alone. You're so brave." Amara giggled, pointing back toward Michael. "I wasn't alone. Mr. Michael helped me. He's super nice." Janet looked up, her eyes widening as she recognized him. Her voice trembled. "Mr. Michael Harris? The real estate owner?" Michael smiled politely. "Just Michael today, Mum." He could see the disbelief on her face. She had probably seen him on magazine covers, news channels, or charity events. Yet here he was, standing at an airport curb, holding a small umbrella over a child's head. Janet stood and offered her hand. "Thank you for taking care of her." "I don't even know what to say." He shook his head gently. "There's no need to thank me. She took care of me more than I did her." Janet smiled softly, not fully understanding, but she could sense the sincerity in his tone. Amara tugged his sleeve. "Are you going home now, Mr. Michael?" He hesitated. "Yes, I think I should." She frowned a little. "Will I see you again?" He looked into her big brown eyes, eyes that reminded him of his daughter's, full of kindness and unspoken wisdom. "I hope so," he said softly. "I really do." As they stood there under the dull grey sky, something in Michael's chest ached. He didn't want this moment to end. The strange peace he'd found in her presence, the warmth that had slowly been returning to his heart. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. "I'd like you to have this," he said, handing it to her. Amara looked at it curiously. "What is it?" "Open it and see." She untied the string and gasped. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, simple but beautiful, with a small angel charm hanging from it. "It's so pretty," she exclaimed, eyes shining. Michael smiled. "That angel was given to me by someone who once told me that whenever I felt lost, I should look at it and remember there's always a light watching over me." He gently clasped it around her wrist. "Now," he said softly, "it's yours. Because I think you're someone's light too." For a moment, Amara didn't say anything. Then she suddenly threw her arms around him. "Thank you. Mr. Michael, I'll take care of it forever." Michael hugged her back, closing his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt tears rise, not from pain, but from gratitude. When he pulled away, his voice was quiet but firm. "You're a special girl, Amara. Don't ever forget that. The world needs people like you." She smiled wide. "Mama says the same thing." He chuckled softly. "Then your mama is a very wise woman." Janet stepped forward. "You've really touched her heart, sir." "Thank you again." He nodded, adjusting his coat. "No, ma'am." She touched mine. As he turned to leave, Amara waved the cardboard sign high, her little voice calling out, "Bye, Mr. Michael. Don't forget to smile." He stopped for a moment, looked back, and smiled genuinely, the way he hadn't in years. "I won't. Amara, I promise." Then he walked away slowly, disappearing into the passing crowd. Amara watched him go, her small fingers brushing the angel charm. It glimmered softly in the cloudy light. Janet took her hand. "You really met Michael Harris?" she asked, shaking her head in disbelief. Amara nodded proudly. "He's nice. I think he's sad inside, though. But he'll be okay." Janet looked down at her, surprised by the child's quiet wisdom. "Let's go, sweetheart," she said gently, leading her toward the exit. As they stepped out into the misty afternoon, Amara whispered a tiny prayer. "God, please help Mr. Michael smile again." And miles away, inside a sleek black car headed downtown, Michael Harris sat in silence, holding his daughter's old photo in one hand, and smiling softly, genuinely, as if that prayer had already reached him. The next morning dawned quietly in the small, sun-faded neighborhood where Amara lived with her mother, Grace. The smell of frying cornmeal filled the kitchen, and the old clock on the wall ticked lazily. Grace hummed softly while stirring the pot, a habit she'd kept since Amara was a baby. Amara sat at the wobbly table, wearing her school uniform, the silver bracelet glimmering on her tiny wrist. She kept staring at it and smiling. Grace noticed and chuckled. "You've been looking at that thing since yesterday, my love. Where did you even get it?" Amara's eyes lit up. "From Mr. Michael. He's a nice man I met yesterday when I went to pick up Auntie Janet. He said I'm someone's light." Grace frowned a little. "Mr. Michael? Yeah. He helped me when my taxi broke down and everything. He's super rich, Mama, but he was really kind." Grace froze for a moment, her spoon pausing mid-air. The name Michael Harris rang a distant bell. She had seen it before and on a company logo, on the construction signboard near the school. But she brushed it off. "Well," she said gently, "whoever he is, I'm just glad you're safe." Amara nodded, kicking her feet under the chair. "He said I made him smile again." Grace smiled softly. "That's my girl." "You always make people smile." Just then there was a knock at the door, firm but polite. Grace wiped her hands on her apron and opened it. A man in a black suit stood there, holding a white envelope embossed with a golden seal. "Good morning," he said. "Are you Miss Grace Williams?" "Yes," she replied cautiously. He smiled and handed her the envelope. "This is for you, ma'am. From Mr. Michael Harris." Grace blinked in shock. "Excuse me? From who?" "Mr. Harris asked me to deliver this personally." The man tipped his hat and left before she could ask another question. Grace shut the door slowly, staring at the envelope as if it were made of gold. Amara had jumped off her chair, eyes wide. "Mama, it's from Mr. Michael." "Open it." Grace hesitated, then carefully broke the seal. Inside was a letter written in elegant handwriting and a folded document. She unfolded the letter. "Dear Miss Grace Williams, yesterday your daughter Amara reminded me of something I had forgotten, what kindness feels like. She sat beside me in a taxi, asking nothing. Yet she gave me peace I haven't felt in years. Her words, her honesty, and her heart moved me deeply. I learned that you raised her alone, that you taught her to be strong, humble, and full of love. That kind of spirit is rare, and it deserves every chance to shine. I hope this gesture can help, even a little. Enclosed, you'll find documents transferring full ownership of house number 14, Greenview Residences in your name. It's not charity, it's gratitude. And for Amara, enclosed is a scholarship that will cover her education until she finishes college. I believe she has a light this world needs. Please help her keep it burning. Thank you for raising the kind of soul that changes people. With deep respect, Michael Harris." Grace's hands trembled. The letter almost slipped from her fingers. She looked up at her daughter, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Amara, do you understand what this means?" Amara tilted her head. That Mr. Michael likes us? Grace laughed softly through her tears. Yes, sweetheart. He likes us, and he's given us a home. She picked up the folded document, reading the bold letters. Title deed, Greenview Residences, owner, Grace Williams. Her knees went weak. She sank into a chair, clutching the letter to her chest. For years, Grace had worked as a cleaner, juggling 2 jobs just to keep a small rented room. Nights when she went to bed hungry so Amara could eat. And now, with one letter, everything changed. Amara climbed into her lap, wrapping her tiny arms around her. Mama, are you crying because you're happy? Grace nodded, smiling through the tears. Yes, baby, so happy. God heard our prayers. Amara looked at the bracelet again, her little voice full of wonder. Mama, I told you he was an angel. Grace kissed her forehead softly. Maybe he was, sweetheart. Maybe he was. She gazed out the window where sunlight had just broken through the clouds, spilling warm light across the table, the same light that glinted on the silver angel around Amara's wrist. And somewhere across the city, in a high-rise office overlooking the skyline, Michael Harris sat at his desk, holding a photo of Amara and her mother that his driver had quietly taken that morning when he delivered the letter. He smiled. For the first time in years, it wasn't a smile for the cameras. It was real, human, and peaceful. 3 weeks had passed since the letter arrived. Life had begun to change in quiet, beautiful ways for Grace and Amara. They had moved into the Greenview residence, a small, cozy home with white fences, blooming garden beds, and a front porch that caught the morning light just right. Every morning, Amara watered the flowers with a little red watering can, humming softly, while Grace sat on the porch with a cup of tea. Sometimes, Grace still couldn't believe it was real. The shiny key hanging by the door, the smell of fresh paint. It all felt like a dream she was afraid to wake from. But every time she saw the silver angel bracelet on Amara's wrist, she knew the miracle was real. That morning, as Grace prepared lunch, she heard the sound of tires crunching on the gravel outside. She peeked through the window. A sleek black car had stopped in front of their gate. Her heart skipped. The door opened, and Michael Harris stepped out, dressed not in a suit this time, but in a simple white shirt and jeans. He looked different, lighter, calmer, and somehow human again. Amara gasped and ran to the door. Mama, it's Mr. Michael! Before Grace could respond, Amara had already sprinted outside, her laughter echoing across the yard. Mr. Michael! She shouted, waving both hands. You came back. Michael smiled, kneeling down to her level as she reached him. I told you I'd try, didn't I? She nodded eagerly. I have so much to show you. Come, come. Michael laughed, a genuine, deep laugh that even surprised him. Amara grabbed his hand and pulled him through the little garden, proudly showing him the flowers, her painted rocks, and the tiny swing her mother had hung on the porch. Grace stood by the door, unsure what to say when he approached. She finally stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly. Mr. Harris, I don't even know how to thank you. What you did for us, Michael raised his hand gently. Please, Grace, just call me Michael, and you don't owe me anything. Your daughter gave me something far more valuable than I gave you. Grace's eyes softened. She's just a child, he smiled. Sometimes children remind us what adults forget, how to be kind without expecting anything back. They both sat on the porch as Amara ran around the yard, chasing butterflies. Grace poured him tea. You've changed her life, you know. We used to dream about having our own house. Now she wakes up every morning singing. Michael looked down at the cup, his reflection rippling in the tea. She changed mine too. Grace tilted her head. How so? He took a breath, his voice quiet but honest. Before I met her, I'd stopped believing people cared without reason. My life was empty. Business, meetings, cameras, but no peace. That day, she treated me like a person, not like a name. And that changed something in me. Grace smiled, tears forming in her eyes. Then maybe it was meant to be. He nodded slowly. Maybe it was. Just then, Amara ran up, holding a small flower crown she had made. Here, Mr. Michael? For you! He blinked, surprised. For me? She nodded proudly. Mama says when people do good things, you have to give them flowers. So this one's yours. He laughed softly and placed the little crown on his head, earning a giggle from Amara. Well, he said with a grin, how do I look? Like a happy person. She giggled. Grace laughed too, and for a moment the porch was filled with warmth and sunlight. Then Michael grew quiet, his eyes glancing toward the sky. "I used to have a daughter," he said softly. "She would have been around Amara's age now. I lost her in an accident 5 years ago." Grace's expression softened. "I'm so sorry." He nodded. "I shut myself away after that. But your little girl, she made me remember her smile. It's like she gave me a piece of her back." Grace reached out, touching his arm gently. "Then maybe my daughter helped heal a father's heart." Michael looked at her, eyes glistening. "Yes, she did." Amara, still playing nearby, turned suddenly and shouted, "Mr. Michael, take a picture with us." He chuckled. "A picture?" She nodded seriously. "So you never forget to smile again." He laughed, handing his phone to Grace. The three of them stood together, Grace in the middle, Amara beaming on one side, and Michael with his silly flower crown on the other. As the camera clicked, a butterfly fluttered past, landing on Amara's shoulder. Michael looked at the photo afterward and realized it was the first picture in years where he looked truly happy. Later, as he stood to leave, Amara hugged him tight. "Don't go too long this time, okay?" He bent down and whispered, "I promise." When he drove away, Grace and Amara stood waving at the gate, their laughter fading into the golden afternoon light. And for the first time in 5 long years, Michael Harris didn't drive toward emptiness, he drove toward hope. Months passed like gentle waves. The seasons turned and the city slowly brightened with spring. For Michael Harris, life had taken on a new meaning. His mornings were no longer filled with silence and echoing offices. Now they began with purpose. He'd wake early, visit construction sites and talk to people. Really talk, not just give orders. His employees noticed the change immediately. Their boss smiled more, listened more, and sometimes even joined them for coffee. But there was one thing he looked forward to most: his Sundays. Every Sunday afternoon, he drove his black car not to the office or a penthouse meeting, but to a quiet street lined with blooming trees. At the end of that street stood the white-fenced home where a little girl always waited, waving, jumping, her laughter echoing before he even reached the gate. "Mr. Michael, you're late!" she'd shout, pretending to scold him. He'd laugh every time. "Traffic, Miss Sunshine. The city doesn't move without you in it." Then they'd spend the afternoon together, painting rocks in the garden, flying kites or eating Grace's famous fried chicken on the porch. Grace, who once struggled through life's storms, had found new peace too. She'd started a small catering business, funded quietly by Michael's connections, but run entirely by her determination. Her cooking, simple, soulful, full of heart, soon became the talk of the neighborhood. Every weekend, the porch would be filled with neighbors laughing, children playing, and the smell of freshly baked bread drifting through the air. Grace often looked at Michael across the table and smiled. She could see the healing in his eyes, the kind that came not from money or success, but from love, forgiveness, and belonging. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky in soft orange, Michael sat quietly watching Amara chase butterflies in the garden. Grace brought him a cup of tea. "You know," she said softly, sitting beside him, "I used to pray for a miracle. Not for money, not even for comfort. Just for something or someone to remind me that life could still be kind." He turned toward her, his eyes gentle. "And maybe your miracle was already living with you." She smiled. "Maybe it was." He looked at Amara again. "She reminds me of hope. Every time she smiles, I remember that even in my darkest days, light can find its way back." Grace took a deep breath, her voice warm. "Then let's promise something, Michael. Let's keep spreading that light, in her name, in your daughter's memory, for everyone who's forgotten kindness." Michael nodded slowly. "I promise." That night after dinner, Amara brought out a small notebook. "Mr. Michael," she said proudly, "I started writing stories, just like you told me to." He smiled. "Oh, really? What's your first story about?" She grinned. "It's called The Man Who Forgot to Smile." He laughed softly, emotion glimmering in his voice. "Sounds familiar." Amara nodded eagerly. "But don't worry. At the end he learns how to smile again because a little girl shows him how." Grace chuckled. "That's a beautiful story, sweetheart." Michael looked at her and said quietly, "It's more than beautiful, it's true." Amara tilted her head. You think people will like it? He leaned forward and whispered, they'll love it. Because it's full of heart. And stories with heart never die. She smiled wide. Then I'll keep writing, so everyone remembers to smile. He reached out, gently touching the silver bracelet on her wrist. Keep that promise, Amara, because you have a gift and a light the world needs. The little girl nodded firmly. I will. Weeks later, at a local community center funded by the Harris Foundation, Grace and Amara stood beside Michael as he announced a new project, the Light Within program. Its mission, to support single mothers and children through education, homes and small business grants. The audience applauded as Michael spoke, his voice steady but full of emotion. This program, he said, isn't born from business or profit. It was born from a moment of kindness, from a child who showed me that no one is too small to make a difference. He looked at Amara, smiling. She reminded me that love doesn't need wealth. It just needs courage. Amara beamed proudly, holding Grace's hand. As the crowd clapped, Grace whispered, You did it, Michael. You turned your pain into light. He smiled softly. No, Grace, we did. That night, under a sky full of stars, Amara stood in her garden, gazing up at the heavens. She whispered, Thank you, God. For Mr. Michael, for Mama, for everything. A gentle breeze brushed past her, and the angel charm on her bracelet shimmered under the moonlight, glowing softly, like a promise kept. Inside the house, laughter echoed. Outside, the world felt a little brighter, and somewhere deep in the night, as Michael Harris looked out from his office window, he smiled again, not the smile of a billionaire, but the smile of a man who finally found home.